The town of Dusty Creek was small enough that everyone knew everyone else's business, and cruel enough that no one ever forgot a single thing. The wind always carried whispers of cattle rustlers, of poker games gone wrong, and of hearts broken before they even had a chance to love. But there was one whisper that had lasted longer than most, one name that was always spoken with a cruel laugh or a pitiful sigh: Mary Ellen Carter. Mary Ellen lived at the edge of town, in a small, crooked shack beside the dry creek bed. Folks said she was born unlucky. Her ma died bringing her into the world, and her pa, a drunk ranch hand, never forgave her for it. She grew up wild and quiet, with tangled hair, big brown eyes, and scars that twisted along one side of her face after she'd been thrown from a horse as a child. People said she was ugly as sin, and she believed them. Every mirror she ever found, she broke. By the time she turned 20, she'd taken to covering her face with an old burlap sack. Cut 2 holes for her eyes, tied it behind her head, and went about her chores like it was the most natural thing in the world. Kids teased her, dogs barked, and men laughed when they passed her on horseback. "Poor sack girl," they'd say. "Too ugly for daylight," and she'd just lower her head, gripping the handle of her pail, and keep walking. Her father died one summer night when the whiskey finally caught up to him. After that, she was completely alone. She made a living doing laundry for the saloon girls, sewing buttons for the preacher's wife, and hauling water from the well at the edge of town. The sack stayed on her face through the heat, through the dust, through the stares. She stopped speaking to anyone but God, and even that was mostly just silence. Then one day, a stranger rode into Dusty Creek. He came from the west, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and a long duster coat the color of sand. His horse was tired, and his eyes, sharp, gray, and sad, spoke of a man who had seen too much of the world. Folks at the saloon said his name was Cole Tanner, a drifter and former outlaw who was trying to leave that life behind. He didn't talk much, just took a room at the inn and spent his evenings playing his harmonica out front, staring at the sunset. The first time he saw Mary Ellen was at the well. It was dawn, and the mist hung low over the prairie. She was struggling with a heavy bucket, her thin arms trembling. Cole dismounted and offered to help, but she turned away sharply. "I don't need help," she said through the coarse fabric. He smiled softly. "Maybe I do. Water's heavy when you're thirsty." She hesitated, then nodded, and together they pulled up the bucket. When it was done, he looked at her, really looked at her, the way no one had in years. Not at the sack, not at the oddness of her, but at the tired kindness in her eyes. He saw something familiar, pain that matched his own. From that morning on, he made it a point to be at the well whenever she came. Sometimes he'd bring her a biscuit from the inn or ask about her chores. She never said much, but he could tell she listened. The townsfolk noticed too. What's a man like him doing talking to her? They'd whisper, "Must be blind." But Cole didn't care. One evening, just before sunset, he found her sitting by the creek, sack fluttering in the breeze. He sat beside her in the dirt without asking. For a while, neither spoke. Then he said quietly, "You ever thought of leaving this place?" "Where'd I go?" she murmured. "Anywhere the wind takes you. Wind don't care where it blows." He smiled faintly. "Maybe that's the point." The silence stretched again, broken only by the cicadas. Then he turned to her, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Why do you hide your face?" She flinched, like she'd been struck. "Because folks don't like what they see." "I ain't folks," he said. Her voice trembled. "You will be, once you see it." He didn't push her then, just nodded and let the moment pass. But something changed between them that night. He began stopping by her cabin, fixing things that needed mending, shopping her firewood, bringing her little gifts, an old book, a red ribbon, a small carved horse. He never tried to take the sack away. He only spoke to her as though it wasn't there at all. Weeks turned into months, and winter crept in over Dusty Creek. The town began to talk. Some said Cole was pitying her. Others said he was cursed. But one Sunday morning, when the church bells rang, Cole Tanner walked right into the chapel with Mary Ellen Carter by his side, sack and all. He sat with her on the front pew. The preacher's words stumbled, and people gasped, but Cole didn't care. He just reached for her hand and held it steady through the sermon. Afterward, outside the church, a rancher spat in the dirt and said loud enough for all to hear, "Guess he's too drunk to know he's sitting with a ghost." Cole turned, calm but cold. "She's more alive than any of you." The rancher laughed. "You think you can marry that? Ain't no man wants what's under that sack." Cole's jaw tightened. Then maybe no man's ever deserved to see it. That night, he rode out to Mary Ellen's cabin. The sky was heavy with snow clouds. She opened the door, lantern in hand, surprise flickering in her eyes. He stepped inside, took off his hat, and stood silent for a long time. Then he said softly, "Mary, I've done things I ain't proud of. I've run from my past, from people, from God. But I don't want to run anymore. Not from you." She froze, clutching the edge of her shawl. "You don't know what you're saying." "I do. I've seen more ugliness in men's hearts than could ever touch your face." Tears welled behind the burlap. "You say that now, but if you saw me." He stepped closer, then let me. Her breath caught. She shook her head violently. "No, you'll hate me. Everyone does." He reached up slowly, gently, as though touching a wild animal. His fingers brushed the edge of the sack. "Mary," he whispered, "ain't no beauty truer than kindness. Ain't no face truer than faith." Her hands trembled. Then, with a shuddering breath, she nodded once. Cole untied the knot and lifted the sack away. The lantern light fell across her face, scarred, twisted on one side, pale from years of hiding. Her lips trembled, eyes wide with shame. She turned away, but Cole didn't flinch. He only looked at her, quiet and steady, until she dared to look back. Then he smiled. "Mary Ellen Carter," he said, "you're the bravest woman I've ever seen." For the first time in her life, she believed him. She wept, not from sadness, but from the strange, fierce relief of being seen and not despised. Cole reached out and brushed a tear from her cheek, his hand gentle as the falling snow. Then he said, "You don't ever need to hide again." That winter, Cole built her a new house on the hill above the creek. Small, warm, with blue shutters and a porch that faced the sunrise. The townsfolk watched from afar, their gossip slowly fading into uneasy silence. Some still whispered, some still mocked, but others, seeing the quiet peace in Mary Ellen's smile, began to soften too. When spring came, they were married under the cottonwood tree. She wore a simple white dress, her hair loose in the wind. No sack, no shame, just sunlight on her face and the sound of the river running below. Years later, when travelers passed through Dusty Creek, they'd sometimes ask about the small house on the hill and the woman who always waved from the porch. Old-timers would nod and say, "That's Mary Ellen Tanner. Used to be called the Sack Girl." But her man, he saw something in her no one else did. Said she was beautiful, and damned if he wasn't right. And when the wind blew through the tall grass at dusk, carrying the sound of a harmonica from the hill, folks swore it wasn't just music. It was love itself, soft and haunting, reminding everyone that sometimes the prettiest things in this world aren't what you see, but what you choose to believe in. Because in Dusty Creek, they once called her too ugly to marry. And then, he removed the sack. And the world saw the truth, that she had never been ugly at all.